All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to your second class, Fundamentals of Marketing. So today, what's kind of the agenda? Here's what we're going to do. We're going to start off talking about consumer wants and needs. These are kind of the fundamental building block of everything we do, right? Kind of addressing those wants and needs after we've come to understand them is kind of our role as marketers. Then we're going to discuss our survey results. So there were super good participation rates on the survey. We have a lot of interesting answers. So I'm going to, as I described before, ask a few of you to kind of talk through your answers and spark a bit of discussion so we can kind of see, what you were thinking and what are the different options to tackle this marketing strategy question. Then we'll break 10 minutes. We'll talk about some strategy heuristics that will kind of help us set broad strategy at kind of the very beginning of the marketing process. And then at the end, I'll talk a bit about term project details. Jan asks, was there a right answer? No, there was no right answer. They were all equally right. It was more just kind of how you explained yourself. That was what I was looking for. Okay. All right, cool. So let's take a look at this thing here. We're going to talk about the automotive industry as our kind of motivating example in the beginning of this class. So, it's a great industry to talk about from the marketing perspective. A lot of money is spent on it by consumers. A lot of money is spent on advertising for it by the firms in this industry. So there's just a lot of money kind of going around. It's a huge part of a modern economy. So can anyone look at this car? I know it looks quite old. Does anyone know what model of car this is? Brand or even the make? Someone says Subaru, Ford. Ahmed says Toyota Corolla, which is an excellent guess. Completely completely correct. Yeah, so this is in fact a Toyota Corolla. It's kind of hard to tell so far back, the wood paneling seems to be something a lot of cars had back then. But kind of more modern, yeah, we can see the Toyota logo. This is a Toyota Corolla. It's best-selling car in Canada in the car category. Best-selling vehicle, of course, is just a Ford F-150. Yeah, great guess, Ahmed. Well done. You should guess more things, buy more lottery tickets. So let's start with kind of a silly question. Why do car buyers need cars? Or put differently, what need does a car satisfy? Point A to point B, transportation, travel, get around. Good. Okay. All good answers, right? To go places, point A to point B. So kind of hold on to this example in the back of your minds. We're going to come back to it in a few slides. So we're going to talk about some concepts that appear in various textbooks about the marketing process. Let's show this 5-step model for the first time. So you saw kind of like a very small, more detailed version of it in the first lecture. Here it is kind of in a readable format. The first 4 steps are kind of things that the marketers are doing, kind of setting things up in order to execute on this sort of 5th and final step in red, which is to capture value from customers and to create profits and customer equity. But the first 4 steps are basically all about how we create value for customers while building customer relationships. So I'm not going to get into the details of each step here. There's going to be plenty of time for that. So what I want to do is re-emphasize the first kind of step here and these particular words. What we're trying to do in the first stage is understand the marketplace and customer needs and wants, right? So we're basically trying to know what it is that will kind of satisfy our consumers in terms of their fundamental need or want in this market, okay? This is kind of where it all starts. How do we develop an understanding of customer needs and wants? First, we need to kind of define what are needs and wants. But moving beyond that, you can think there's maybe going to be some theory that guides our thinking, what do customers need and want in a particular situation. There's also going to be market research that we can do and will probably want to do to understand these needs and wants. So today we're going to talk a little bit about kind of the theory behind customer needs and wants. I think next lecture we'll talk about market research. So we talked about the marketing concept a little bit last class as a guiding philosophy for marketing managers. And the marketing concept is we want to determine the wants and needs of consumers and then satisfy these wants and needs more efficiently and effectively than competitors, okay? So again, we kind of see the words wants and needs appearing here. So really, we do need a definition. What are wants and needs? So needs in the context of this course, we'll define as felt states of deprivation, okay? So there's kind of three different felt states of deprivation, three different needs, right? We have physical needs, social needs, and individual needs, okay? So physical needs would be, the need for things like food, safety, clothing, and warmth. Social needs, the need for belonging, affection, friendship. Individual needs, the need for knowledge and self-expression. So maybe I'll ask you guys, what would be an example of a product or a service that satisfies a physical need? And Shakir, yes, the slides will be posted after class. Shelter, housing, restaurant, perfect. So all kind of like general categories of products, right? Food and water, healthcare, perfect. And what about a product or service that satisfies a social need? Zoom, yeah, maybe. Gym, Instagram, Abanahita, friendship. I don't know if I would call friendship a product or service, but maybe we'll come back to that. Instagram, Snapchat. Yeah, so I see we see a lot of kind of more modern things like social media, right? Bars, restaurants. Yeah, nothing inappropriate, guys. So belonging and affection, right? So, yeah, we have kind of social media, social interaction through like Facebook, Instagram, whatever. Before that, things that help satisfy social needs, what about like kind of going on a vacation, right? Going somewhere with your family or with your friends, these kinds of things, right? Okay, and what about individual? Yeah, so maybe tourism, right? So what about an individual need? Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of like school and books, perfect, right? So you guys are all here because you just have a burning desire for knowledge, self-expression. Also university degree is, probably the best investment you can make in your kind of future earnings potential. So it doesn't just help knowledge and self-expression, although that is a huge part of it, right? Perfect. Now, what is a want? A want is the form a need takes when presented through the lens of culture, personality, and experience, okay? So Amisha asks, aren't these all connected? Aren't these needs all connected? They are kind of connected in a way. Kind of depends on what theory of needs you subscribe to. I'll present one, kind of a common one in a slide or two. So wants are the form a need takes when presented through the lens of culture, personality, and experience. Wants are often expressed in terms of specific products, brands, or firms, right? Unlike needs, right? Needs were kind of these general categories of product. Wants are specific products that are already out there in the marketplace, right? So for example, if I need food, the way that would be kind of translated is I actually want, say, caviar, okay, perfect. Sushi, chocolate, something specific, right? And maybe even like a specific brand, right? Like I want Domino's, Ben and Jerry's, right? So for every want, what you should think about is that there's like an underlying need, okay? This is a discussion which kind of you wouldn't have in a microeconomics class, right? So in a microeconomics class, in the economic lens, how do we kind of think about people's decision making? There's a utility function, right? You have a utility function that's defined over different products or over different product characteristics, right? So you have this utility function, often they use, or they did in my undergrad, apples and oranges, right? I have utility over apples and oranges, right? So in economics, we typically start from the set of products, right? We don't actually kind of think about this needs in the background, right? Here, it's going to be useful to maintain the distinction. And in general, like the economics approach is the way that we do things in quantitative marketing, but it can be very useful to maintain the distinction, in particular when we're thinking about needs and innovation, right? New products that haven't kind of been created yet, which it's hard to define utility over, but which we can easily map to an underlying need, right? Okay. So going back to an earlier question, right? Aren't all the needs connected? So here's one theory of how they're all connected. This is a hierarchy of needs. In fact, it's, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? And this is a theory, right? The theory here is that some needs aren't needed until other more fundamental needs have been met, right? So you don't really need safety stuff until you've achieved your physiological needs. And I agree, like, is this the way the world works? Is this the way people operate psychologically? No, it's a theory. Is there some evidence for it? Yes, in some contexts, but there's plenty of evidence against it as well. But the idea here is that it's still kind of something that's very widely thought of as being the way that people operate. Yeah, so lower means more important. So you need to satisfy something low at the base of the pyramid before you can make it up to the next level, right? So you want to satisfy your physiological needs before safety, safety before kind of the psychological needs, and then the psychological needs before your self-fulfillment needs, right? You're not trying to self-actualize before you've kind of you're able to sort of feed and clothe yourself, right? So yeah, the diagram's far from perfect. May not describe all people, may lump some needs together that don't quite belong together, but it's definitely a useful illustration and a useful starting point. So why do car buyers need cars? Okay, this was our original question that we started up the lecture with. And let's use Toyota as an example, and let's see kind of how the marketing for cars relates to these customers' underlying needs, okay? Before we go into that, does anyone know what other brands does Toyota own in addition to just their main Toyota? Yeah, Lexus. This is Scion. Yeah. So Scion is gone now, but this was kind of part of their overall stable of brands. And we're going to use some ads from Scion. Okay. So here's an ad from Toyota. And it's very explicit, right? Let's go places. What did you guys identify? Like the need that a car satisfies, get from point A to point B, right? Does a Toyota car satisfy this need, right? Yeah, for sure, right? Every car should satisfy this need. Does it satisfy this need better than competitors? Does it get you from A to B better? Subjective, depends. If all you're trying to do is get from point A to point B, yeah, it depends on, so I see a lot of kind of like conditioning, maybe fuel efficiency matters, right? Does it get you there cheaper? Does it get you there faster, right? And, it'll depend on which model of Toyota, but in general, we can say that Toyotas probably do this about as well as any other competitor, including things like a bus, right? A bus or a train also gets you from point A to point B. So, car is doing it a little bit better, gets you exactly where you want to go to exactly where you want to go in the vehicle. But we're thinking, about this framework of needs. And when we think about this framework of needs, physical, social, individual, what kind of need is this? This to get from point A to point B? Where does that fit? Or is it a basic need? Maybe physical, maybe safety. So I think we can all feel like this is, in modern society, like a basic need, like you do need to be able to get from point A to point B, but it's not on the hierarchy, right? If you need a car to satisfy other types of needs, would you say it's kind of a lowest need in the pyramid? Yeah, so there is kind of a feeling that a car should be fairly low on the pyramid, living in North America and kind of car-centric cities. But it doesn't seem to match to any of these like things that Maslow defined. And maybe that's just because the pyramid's a little bit out of date. Or maybe we kind of need to dig a little bit deeper. But let's see. So the marketing concept is to satisfy the wants and needs of our customers more effectively and efficiently than competitors, right? So we need to do it better than our competitors. And we're kind of thinking like, yeah, Toyota gets you from A to B about as well as a competitor, right? So how is it doing it more effectively and efficiently? It's not, or it doesn't seem to be. So let's look at some other marketing materials for Toyota. So upper left, we have the same logo, right? Let's go places. But we also have a bunch of other stuff, right? We have this family kind of jumping and dancing around with this celebrity. It's Busta Rhymes. So this is definitely an old ad. On the right, we have this Toyota against a field of hot air balloons. We have what looks like a couple holding hands. Bottom left, right, another Toyota, here, a mother and presumably their child. So when we look at these advertisements, what kind of needs do you think the marketer had in mind, right? Is it still A to B, or is there some other needs that are being addressed? Belonging, safety, family, relationships. Yeah, family oriented, right? So, what makes the sunset nice to enjoy with your partner? Like what makes hanging out with your family and Busta Rhymes like a fun time? Does it have anything to do with the car? Not necessarily, right? Not really, right? All of these things are good without the car, right? But we can kind of see if transportation is the primary need, Toyota's advertising here is also trying to associate the car with secondary needs, right? Suggesting that they can be fulfilled by using the car, right? So this is an angle that Toyota is using to try to satisfy needs more efficiently and effectively than competitors, right? Because everyone is getting you from A to B just, approximately as well, but maybe Toyota is helping you fulfill a social need while it's getting you places, right? So maybe social needs, maybe belongingness and love, right? So does Toyota specifically think about this theory when creating these ads? Can't know for sure, right? What I can say is that a reason why these ads work is because of kind of some of the truth of this theory, right? The reason why they kind of make sense. So regardless of Toyota's intent, we can analyze these ads as being effective based on kind of the theory, right? If you market the car to fulfill a need it can't satisfy, right? If your car can't give you the belonging needs, doesn't this dissatisfy a customer by expecting more and getting underwhelmed? Definitely. If you're setting expectations high and then you're underperforming, that can be, quite bad in terms of attracting customers or in terms of kind of, retaining a customer. We'll talk about a bit more about that next lecture. This kind of difference between like setting expectations and kind of maintaining a relationship by meeting those expectations. All right, some more Toyota ads. Everyone deserves to be safe, 5-star safety system, right? So here, the secondary need that Toyota is trying to satisfy, in addition to getting from A to B, is going to be clearly a physical need, right? Safety, right? Okay, now let's take a look at Scion. So Scion was kind of their down market brand, down market meaning like lower priced vehicles. Let's take a look at some of these Scion ads. So be an icon, not an imitation, be the original, make an impression. So for Scion, kind of what is the pitch? In addition to getting you from point A to point B, what does Scion kind of promise you? Yeah.
I think it targets a younger audience. Like Toyota used to have a lot of sports cars in its lines, but after the 2000s, in the turn of the century, they stopped offering sports cars in their Toyota brand, and they started offering those in the Scion brand, like the FRS, I think. So I think it's more towards a younger, aggressive audience who want a bit more fun compared to the family-oriented Toyota and the luxury, elite-oriented Lexus. So all three segments.
Good. So, okay, they're clearly kind of tailoring this to a specific segment. Yeah, good comment. And then in terms of, I guess, so that segment being younger, a bit less money, is it kind of a happy accident that we think that younger people also want to self-actualize more? Or is Toyota kind of choosing this deliberately, right? So it's kind of, I agree, they're kind of trying to hit it from two angles, both the cost and the self-actualization. And you mentioned Lexus. So let's take a look at some of Lexus's marketing materials. And I think you guys can probably guess, given what you know about Lexus, what the pitch is for this brand, right? So here we have arriving fashionably, special, even more special edition, right? Somehow you'll be more glamorous, or people will look up to you based on the car you drive, right? So for getting from point A to point B, does this car do it any better? You know, maybe it's a bit more comfortable, maybe it's a bit faster. They're not really claiming anything extra in terms of safety in these ads. But I want to ask you guys, do you think these are safe cars? Why? It's Toyota. Okay, so the brand recognition there. In general, do you think that luxury cars that kind of promise this kind of lifestyle are safer? Yeah, often the case. They should be, right? Yeah, you know, and part of that you can understand through this lens, right? That if the car is basically promising you sort of elite status, achieving your full potential, right? Then maybe implicitly the idea is like they're already able to guarantee you everything up to that point. You know, it's going to be safety. You know, it's going to like help you make friends, all of these good things, right? Okay, perfect. So this is kind of where this secondary need is living for Lexus. So some broader lessons here from customer needs. All right, some needs don't neatly fit into one of the three categories, like transportation needs. And when your competitors' products satisfy the same primary need, companies might market to secondary needs in order to satisfy needs and wants more efficiently and effectively. They'll basically kind of move aside from the main need, bring in something else that might not even be related, and then trying to pitch that they're kind of better at addressing that, right? And we've also seen here something that'll, you know, give a preview of what's going to happen in a few lectures. A company can use different brands it owns to focus on different secondary needs, right? Maybe attracting a wider base of consumers by segmenting them into different groups that have different secondary needs. And finally, you know, one thing we've seen is that an emphasis on secondary needs can reflect real product features like safety, but it can also be imaginary, right? Like the belongingness and the family needs, right? Imaginary in the sense that it's not concrete, like safety that's sort of like testable, right? No one's out there testing whether Toyotas help you feel like you belong. Okay. So, historically, cars have been the most heavily advertised consumer product. Toyota spends a lot of money advertising each year, and this is just Toyota, right? So remember, we had some big numbers for Disney's earnings from Star Wars. And it was something like $4.4 billion US from the box office, which seemed like a huge amount. Toyota's spending that amount on advertising each year. And the high level of advertising, it has a lot to do with the presence of many competing companies in the car industry. And it also has a lot to do with the fact that all of these car companies are doing the same thing pretty well, right? That A to B. But the presence of competition, in addition to affecting the level of advertising, it can also affect the content of advertising, right? So let's take a look at how advertisements would have looked before. There were kind of a huge number of competitors. So back in the early days of the car industry. So the pitch for this car is dispense with a horse, right? Don't need a horse anymore. You can save the anxiety of keeping it. You can save, it's no odor, right? So in this example, we can kind of see you have a revolutionary new product and it unambiguously satisfies a primary need better than the products that existed before it, right? So you can promote it based on this primary need that it serves, right? The car is, potentially faster, less expensive in terms of the maintenance, maybe less smelly according to this ad. And so you don't need to bring up the secondary needs that have little or nothing to do with the product's actual function. You kind of want to do something that explains what this thing does and why it does it better, right? Right, so there's a question. So some brands don't advertise at all, or they advertise minimally, but they're still very famous. So how do they market their product, like Ferrari, for instance, right? So it's a good question. One, do we know that Ferrari doesn't advertise a lot, right? Like we know that they're not putting TV ads on, primetime television, or they're not putting ads on YouTube. But I don't know, like that could be kind of a targeting story, right? They know that we're not really the ones who are going to be buying the ads. We do see some advertising strategies for luxury car companies that are not the standard ones, right? So product placement, right? So you put a product placement, BMW did it for sort of James Bond, so did Aston Martin. Kind of seeing these cars appear in these different contexts kind of adds to the prestige. But yeah, it's a good question. We'll probably come back to it. All right, so our next kind of topic connected to consumer needs and wants, our next definition is this idea of marketing myopia. So what is marketing myopia? Marketing myopia is the mistake of paying more attention to the specific products that your company offers than to the benefits they produce, right? So you focus only on existing wants and you lose sight of underlying needs, right? And this is where it really is useful to think about the distinction between needs and wants in the context of kind of like innovative new technology, innovative new kind of products or services, right? So does anyone know what this, we have this little orange thing on this silhouette. Does anyone know what that is or what it's called? Right, it's a whip. Yeah, so it's a whip. It's like you use it if you're, I guess this guy uses it to kind of motivate the horse. And it's called a buggy whip to be kind of precise here, right? This guy is riding a buggy. And I bring it up, because many companies and even entire industries have kind of collapsed as a result of marketing myopia. And I bring it up because it's kind of the subject of a sort of early seminal Harvard Business Review article where the marketing myopia was defined, right? So let me read this. The classic example of this marketing myopia phenomenon is the buggy whip industry, right? no amount of product improvement could stave off its death sentence. But had the industry defined itself as being in the transportation business rather than in the buggy whip business, it might have survived. It would have done what survival always entails, that is change, even if it had only redefined its business as providing, a stimulant or a catalyst to an energy source. It might have survived in some other form. Okay, so what is the buggy whip doing, right? Yeah, it's sad. It's kind of to hit the horse to make them go faster, or to kind of motivate the horse. And people wanted these things in order to kind of get their carriages moving faster, or kind of to control the horse. The need that this thing is satisfying is to get from point A to point B, right? To get from point A to point B faster and more controlled, right? The want that it satisfies is only useful in the context of a horse and a buggy and this kind of carriage operator, right? So the idea here is, the focus was just on trying to sell this product. And there's no amount of improvement you can make to this product when cars come along that will allow you to kind of continue selling this product and doing as well as you did before, right? You need to switch, you need to pivot, right? So the need is always there, get from point A to point B, but the want for this thing has shifted, right? And it would have shifted towards cars, okay? So this is quite an old example, but we have some recent companies that have fallen victim to marketing myopia, right? So here's Kodak. Kodak used to be one of the biggest companies in the United States. They're based in upstate New York in Rochester. And they failed when digital cameras kind of overtook film-based cameras, right? So Kodak lost out to Sony. Indeed, Kodak lost out to kind of every manufacturer who started building or started making digital cameras instead of film-based cameras, right? So, according to the logic of marketing myopia, according to this kind of Harvard Business Review guy, how should this company, Kodak, have defined their business differently, right? Instead of saying we make film for cameras, right, which was something that people ended up not needing anymore once we had digital cameras, what could Kodak have defined their industry as being? Like, what need do they actually satisfy with their product, and how do they pivot? Cool, yeah. Keeping memories, capturing moments. So maybe this is partly like, a social need or a belongingness need. Maybe it's also kind of a self-actualization need, right? To sort of, for the art of taking photos, right? So the need is like kind of belongingness, self-actualization, right? And kind of more specific, right? Maybe like, yeah, capturing family memories, right? Or capturing like vacation memories. So what could they have pivoted towards? Good. So an easy thought is, or like a great thought is SD cards, right? That's, what perhaps they could have done, going from the business of storage on film to storage on SD cards. Actually, they did research into this, but they threw it out. They decided that basically it's not going to be a big thing, SD cards and digital cameras. And that kind of was the wrong choice. Yeah. Here's another example. This one, some of you guys might remember, if you go back, 10 years or so. So Blockbuster, what was Blockbuster's business? What did they do? What want did they satisfy? Movie rentals, yeah, renting DVDs. And so kind of what need was Blockbuster satisfying? Yeah, entertainment, good, right? So for Blockbuster, what could they have done, right? Their need is, the need they satisfy is people's need for entertainment, right? And more so than that, kind of like at-home entertainment, right? Things that are kind of happening in the home, not kind of outside the home. Right? Yeah, maybe moved to streaming, moved online, for sure, right? So they could have, does anyone know the history between Blockbuster and Netflix? did Netflix take Blockbuster by surprise? So around 2010 or so, Netflix is still mostly DVDs mailed out, but they're starting to switch to streaming. Not sure. Yeah, so if you kind of go into the history of this, actually Blockbuster had a chance to buy Netflix. Yeah, Lysander kind of mentioned here, did Netflix want to buy Blockbuster? Actually, it was the other way around. Blockbuster was kind of given the offer to buy Netflix, and they decided not to. And I think that was in 2008 or 9. And that kind of, I think by 2014, Blockbuster had closed thousands of stores already. So you can definitely think of more examples, right? Like, maybe we can think about examples of industries that successfully avoided falling victim, right? So for instance, newspapers, that was an industry that was satisfying people's need to be informed. Did they successfully pivot? Kind of, right? Now almost every newspaper is online and it's an app, but are they as dominant as they were? No, right? Okay. So, all right, now let's kind of move into our discussion of these different marketing orientations and talk about the survey, and then we'll break. Okay. So, the marketing mix that we mentioned last class, right? We have these 4 Ps: place, product, price, and promotion. Actually, let me see. So Firas has an interesting question. Local newspapers are failing. Is this because of marketing myopia? Maybe. There's definitely a change in technology when it comes to news delivery, right? Online, which means that scale is more important than it ever was, right? So it's now extremely cheap to kind of write an article and have tens of millions of people see it. Whereas, a local newspaper in the past, they're maybe serving to tens of thousands at a much higher cost. So, part of it is like, are the demands for kind of local news changing? That might be one thing, but also is the cost structure of local news just not able to compete with kind of a big online guy who's doing everything online, right? All right. Never heard about SixBuzz. Definitely going to Google that. Check that out. What about the taxi industry? Another really interesting one. We're actually going to come back to that in the second half of the lecture. All right. So our marketing management orientation. So I asked you guys to kind of take a look at these in the book, right? We have the marketing concept. And this is kind of satisfying needs and wants more efficiently and effectively than our competitors. We have the production orientation, the selling orientation, the societal marketing concept, and then the relationship marketing concept. So let's kind of go through these. We kind of know the marketing concept. We've been talking about it a bit. Other marketing management orientations. So the production orientation, this is the idea that firms should kind of focus on improving production and distribution efficiency because consumers prefer highly available and affordable products. And when we think about marketing management orientations, we should think about which of the 4 Ps does it focus on. I think with marketing management, with the marketing concept, we're kind of focusing on all of them at once, right? To serve our customers and find out their needs and wants better, we kind of need to think about all 4. But when we look at the production concept, really we're focused on improving efficiency and production. Why? Because we assume that consumers prefer highly available and affordable products, right? If this assumption is true, really all consumers care about is that it's everywhere and it's cheap, then for this particular product, then the production orientation is a good thing to focus on, right? Its emphasis is on price and on place. So for some things, right, some basic items, maybe something like toothpaste, right? You just want to be able to find it anywhere. You want it to be fairly inexpensive, right? So the production orientation can be good there. The selling orientation, firms should undertake large-scale selling and promotion efforts. Otherwise, consumers won't buy enough, right? So here we definitely have an emphasis on promotion, right? So for some products, you can think, yeah, we really do need to do a hard sell. Some products are just things that consumers think about very, very infrequently. Thinking about things like life insurance or, funeral services or things like that. These companies may want to like sort of be a bit more aggressive because people just don't really want to be thinking about these things for whatever reason, right? So the emphasis can be on promotion. So if the assumption is true, if really consumers don't want to think about it at all, they would never engage with this product if they can help it, then promotion is potentially what you should be focusing on. Okay. Is this the case for pharmaceutical ads? So it's interesting. I think we'll get into ads a bit more. Ads serve multiple roles, right? There's the, informative aspect, which a lot of pharmaceutical ads rely on. Like we're telling you, here's what this drug will do for you. Then apart from the informative aspect, there's like the attention getting aspect, right? You might already be aware of this product. Everyone's aware Coca-Cola exists, but just kind of being continually reminded of it so that it's the first thing you reach for, right? So informative and persuasive, perfect, yeah. So other marketing management orientations, we have the societal concept. We're trying to balance different needs, consumer needs, company needs, but then also kind of long run welfare, right? So, this doesn't have a natural tie-in to the marketing mix. It's kind of a response to the criticism that, marketers ignore the impacts of their activities on society. So instead of just worrying about the 4 Ps and customers and company profits, we should also be thinking about the impact of marketing on society, right? Socially and environmentally responsible marketing. And then our last one in the textbook is relationship marketing, which is the idea that firms should focus on customer retention more so than customer acquisition, right? Retaining customers, building a strong relationship is the most important thing in order to maximize value for the firm and for the customers. So the emphasis here is not super clear. Again, it's kind of all 4 because we're trying to satisfy needs and wants better, but it's needs and wants in a specific context for a customer base that we already have, right? Or our focus is, we're not trying to sort of appeal mass market necessarily. We're trying to invest our resources in building relationships where customers keep coming back over and over again. Okay. All right. So we have these 5 different things, these 5 different marketing management orientations. So here was the survey. Here's what I asked you guys. You're a marketing consultant. And the Ontario Produce Marketing Association wants you to help them figure out how to market Canadian agricultural products to European consumers, right? So what's the best kind of strategic perspective for this task, okay? So we have a few options. No one chose production, so I'll come back to that. But maybe we'll start with the selling orientation. So I'm going to call on people, and if kind of they're not around, then I'll kind of call on someone whose hand is up. So I'll start with selling. So let's see, so Lysander, I think you're in chat here. So Lysander, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and maybe discuss why you think selling is kind of the correct orientation for this task.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh yeah, so I picked selling orientation because in the textbook it said it focuses on getting the product out to consumers in a particularly competitive market. And since it's agricultural, I thought that European consumers would have a lot of different, there's a lot of competition in that market. Like they could look at American agriculture, Australian, from different countries. So that's why I picked selling, to like specifically focus on the Canadian one.
Perfect. Okay, good answer. So you're thinking very competitive market, in order for European consumers to be A, aware, and B, kind of considering Canadian products, they should be at least like, they should know about it, right? At a bare minimum. And then maybe beyond that, they should be kind of reminded about it. Okay, awesome. Cool. Let me ask, is Yeah, Tarek, you have your hand up, or Tarek.
Hi, yeah. Do I have to answer for selling orientation or
Yeah,
marketing?
we're doing selling right now.
Oh, okay. I answered for marketing orientation, so I can just wait for that.
Okay, cool. All right. So, all right. So basically, yeah, I think Lysander's answer is a great one. Like under the assumption that it's a very competitive market and consumers are kind of overwhelmed with choice, really like doing the hard sell is, potentially the right thing to do, right? Okay. So now let's go marketing orientation. So let me ask, is Kartika here?
Hi, I
Hi.
think I put in societal marketing orientation. But does
Okay,
it?
so I can see you did choose marketing orientation, but
Oh, I think I accidentally, because my response, the justification I gave was, I think, for societal marketing.
okay, so I'll come back to you next, and then I'll
Okay.
ask Tarek
Yeah.
to give us his marketing orientation answer.
Professor.
Okay.
Sorry, yeah, Mohammed.
I think, what do you think about selling orientation? I think it's going to be quite challenging, especially when it comes to this. Like, how would you sell like a produce? Like, how would you compete with regards to that? Like with property, like you could be like, this property is better in this way, that way, the location, whatnot. Like with produce, how are you going to sell it? Like, my apple is bigger, redder, or what?
Yeah, no,
Like,
I
how's
mean,
it
it's a
gonna
great
work?
question. Does anyone have any thoughts? Like, how do you sell an apple when all apples are similar, or are they all similar?
I have an example for that.
Sure.
It's like there's like these Italian tomatoes that come canned to Canada, for example, and they're highly sought after by a lot of people because they're apparently grown in like volcanic soil, and that makes them sweeter and that makes them better for sauces, and it's sought after by a lot of people around these parts, like Italian people. Or like personally, I just buy that in like Costco instead of Canadian ones because they genuinely do taste better. So I guess that could be one way. If it's just like a baseline superior product, you can just say it's better.
Good. Yeah. So if you do have a better product, you can definitely pitch it like that. Are Canadian products better? Or more importantly, do Europeans perceive of as Canadian products as better? That's kind of something we don't know. Yeah, Alexandra.
I feel like you could also not just sell on like, is it bigger, is it better, but also, is it readily available? So maybe in Canada, that wouldn't be the best option because we can't grow in the winter. I don't know anything about agriculture, so this is just me assuming. But let's say like we can't grow in the winter and a different country can grow a certain fruit or a certain produce like all year round. I'm pretty sure a consumer would rather have it readily available than just have like really good apples for like 3 months and then have to find a different different seller, I guess, for the rest of the months.
Yeah, no, great point. So if you can pitch Canadian produce as being kind of seasonal and like meeting seasonal demand in a way that maybe local produce can't, yeah, that could be a good pitch. Okay, so I'm gonna go to I'm going to go to marketing orientation. I think this is a great discussion, but just so that we kind of have time to go through them all. So yeah, let me go back to Tarek.
Thank you, Professor. I chose the marketing orientation because it focuses on discovering who the consumer is. And assuming we do not know the European consumer, we're trying to find out what kind of fruits they like and what other vegetables we would want to introduce to that market. So I would think definitely step one, we would definitely find out what their needs are. And I think that's the focus of the marketing orientation. And that's why I chose it.
Right. So understanding consumer needs and wants, like what we know that Europeans need food. Everyone needs food. But what do they want from their produce, right? That's something we don't know, but maybe we could figure out with some research and then see if we actually do it better, right? Yeah, great point. So Shakir, your hand's up.
Yeah, so I also chose marketing orientation, and I decided to compare different orientations in my answer. The last two options were like societal marketing and societal marketing and just marketing orientation. And I justified choosing marketing orientation because there was like a chapter in the book mentioned that societally advertised products are regarded as being pricier than their counterparts. So I said that because of that, going to a new market with the possible perception that our products are more expensive than the competitor is not really safe. So I chose the marketing orientation for that reason.
Okay. All right. So, the association, if you're doing a societal kind of campaign, is that this is going to be more expensive, right? And that's not necessarily what people want in their produce. So it's a competitive market for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, perfect. All right. I think I've heard from Mohammed earlier in the class, so I'll ask Firas.
Hey, Professor. So I picked marketing orientation as well for very similar reasons as my peers who did mention that, to truly market something that is already very available in Europe, you must understand what the customer needs are and find out if there's a gap in that need to satisfy. I put that in my justification as well, but mostly it was about the idea that I was fortunate enough to travel a lot of Europe, and I've noticed that societal marketing is big there as well. So you can't necessarily just say that, oh, Canadian vegetables, for example, are organic, because there are also other local organic vegetables too. You're talking about one of the most fertile areas in the world as well, so it's very difficult to market yourself there. It's also very hard to give a value proposition based on price, because we also know that the price of agriculture when shipped is going to be like a little bit more pricier depending on what type of thing that you're going to be selling. So, and the relationship marketing orientation, the idea of creating a long-term relationship with customers, I believe intuitively, and I could be corrected on this, is the idea that if you try to make such deep relations with people from outside the country, it's much more difficult than those who are already locally based. They have a better understanding of the cultural nuances. They have a better understanding of what the needs of the customer are at a much deeper level than, so like if you're coming from a foreign country trying to understand what the customer needs are, then you'd have to exert that extra energy to actually know what they are and then satisfy.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So I mean, fundamentally, doing the research and understanding, like, so it sounds like you kind of are feeling like understanding those needs and wants is key, and especially because it's in a market where these needs and wants are already being satisfied in many different ways, like by very good products. So basically finding, is there a niche for a Canadian product?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So cool. All right. So let's talk a bit about then societal marketing orientation. I think this was one of those the popular ones. So I'll ask Kartika. So you meant to choose societal. Oh wait, no, you did pick marketing orientation. Okay, I'll come back to you next class. No worries. So let's go. Someone who did pick societal. Is Fadlan here?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, so I chose societal because I guess, because someone already said that there's a lot of competition there about like the quality of like how the products are grown. So you could also and one way to market is how much better it is.
Yeah. So let me ask you. So what for a societal marketing campaign, like what would you emphasize differently compared to just using the marketing concept?
I guess like you could emphasize on like sustainability, because nowadays people do care about those kinds of things.
Cool. So I guess perfect. So kind of focusing on sustainability, agriculture is a great industry for thinking about the societal concept because it is so tied with issues of like environmental welfare. So let me kick it over to Adsense.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I think so. I chose societal marketing orientation as well, and one of the reasons I chose it is because demographic and location plays a marketing factor or like a plus role in a sense. Because if you like say if we're just talking about produce, like Florida oranges are highly sought after, especially when they come in season. And then same thing when you go with like pineapples and mangoes from like tropical countries, they would also be marketed heavily on the location. So I don't think Europe has, well, I don't know, I haven't done any research, but I don't think Europe's demographic has many Canadian produce sources. So marketing the demographic like maple syrup is a big thing that Canada's known for, but then like taking the does that make sense, or am I like going
somewhat? I'm trying to find the kind of the societal angle in there, the thing where it's kind of like focused on more than just like customer needs and wants, like and the firm profits. It feels like you're kind of saying that you know, like there's value in like variety of products as well, right?
Yeah.
And like we might have stuff that they don't.
Exactly, vice versa.
Yeah. So I would probably call that just like the regular marketing concept, because you kind of want to dig in and see like, you know, if they don't have maple syrup over there, there's two reasons for that. One, no one can supply it at a price people are willing to buy, or two, right, there just isn't enough demand, right? So we'd want to figure out like which of those two situations are we in, right? Like could we do it better?
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, awesome. All right, good answer. So we'll go now to relationship marketing, and then we'll break for 10 minutes. So yeah, to close it out, is Shohui in the call?
Hello.
Hey, yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. So I choose relationship marketing because I think it's very important to build a long-term relationship, because for like produce, it's not like a new trendy thing. After you sell it, it's over. For food, you have to, the customers have to consume it on a regular basis. So you need to make sure that you build a trusting relationship, so you have a steady stream of demands for your products.
Good. So yeah, it's a common product. People are consuming it constantly. It's important to kind of get someone and keep them. I think that's that's definitely a good thought. So I think that relationship it's definitely tough in this context, right? So, you know, for me, like my personal experience, like I don't know where my produce comes from, like when I pick stuff up in the grocery store, and I certainly don't search for specific produce based on where it comes from. So, you know, I think that maybe a lot of customers in this market are quite fickle, right? Like they'll pick whatever fruit is their taste, or whatever is cheapest, right? Like if they want a banana, they don't necessarily care where it comes from. So I think that, yeah, hand in hand with relationship, I think it's good, but you then also kind of need to pitch that this is kind of worth looking for. So it's some kind of quality dimension as well.
Yeah, I understand you need to like send out first before you retain your customers. But
for sure,
I still think long-term, focus on long-term for this kind of products is very important.
No, I think I completely agree. Like, because you will have people coming back over and over again. It's just kind of like how to make it work. But I think these are really good thoughts. And yeah, perfect. So let me call on kind of one more person, and then we'll break. I think, yeah, Bhavjot has had their hand up for a while.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
So I had my hand up for societal marketing, not relationship marketing. Sorry. I can put my hand up. I can speak about societal marketing if you want.
No worries. We'll come back to you maybe next class. So Sana, are you relationship marketing?
Yeah, I am.
Right,
my Wi-Fi might cut off in the middle, and I might just like it will like boot me, but if it doesn't cut me, then it's okay. So I chose relationship marketing because I was thinking that as a marketer, it is important to like focus and plan like our long-term customer engagement and prove supplying our products in the best price possible, which they would consider us better than the rest, because first we're like showing our loyalty to them, and we will stay engaged and stay like, I don't know, like basically stay engaged. And other than that, I was also thinking that as Canadians, when we foster our customer loyalty to like our international consumers, they will also make us a priority when something that other countries need and which what they have, you know what I mean? Like if there's something that is in demand and not any other country has it other than European countries, then I feel like they would prioritize us if we maintain our relationship like nicely with them.
Oh, that's cool. So you're not thinking just about like customer relationships, but relationships between
I was
like
thinking
the countries.
instead
Okay.
of yeah.
Yeah.
Instead of just having a short-term plan, like why not have a long-term plan and like even think ahead of just us providing them with goods, but them also providing us with goods.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's interesting. It's definitely interesting. I hadn't thought about that angle. All right, awesome. So thanks everyone. So unfortunately, I'm gonna have to cut it off here because we're definitely over time for the break. So it's 6:11 right now. So I'll stay in chat. You know, if you want to chat about it, feel free. But we'll kind of get back to it at 6:21. We'll resume then. Okay. All right, 621. Let's get back into it. So didn't quite make it to the end of our kind of Toyota example. So I'm gonna leave this for kind of you guys to look at after class. Also, it needs to be updated a little bit. So all you need to know will kind of be on the slides for this little bit. So let me just go through it. Okay. So we've mentioned marketing management kind of here and there. You know, choosing a marketing management orientation. So what is marketing management, right? It's setting the strategy. In the textbook, it's kind of defined a bit more narrowly. Like this is kind of a textbook style definition, art and science of choosing target markets and building profitable relationships with them. So that's kind of a formal definition. I think that it's easier to think of marketing management as kind of everything that's in the job description for the firm's marketing manager. And a big part of that is choosing target markets, right? You're basically selecting like, who am I kind of trying to serve? What are their needs and wants? Maybe how should I divide up this market to kind of target them better? We'll talk about that in a few lectures. But really kind of the broad thing that a marketing manager does, you know, overseeing, planning, directing all of the steps in the marketing process that we talked about in the first lecture. So marketing manager, it's a real title in firms. I think the pay is quite good. You're typically articulating some kind of strategic goal. It could be a goal about acquiring consumers. It could be a goal about retaining customers. It could be a goal about, say, like building brand equity. But a marketing manager will kind of potentially be able to do all of these things, okay? And kind of picking the orientation is a key step in kind of pursuing your strategy. Really, you should think about it as a high-level decision on how you allocate your firm's resources, right? Thinking about that budget. So when you're managing the marketing process, here's kind of a classic like marketing flow chart. And you don't have to worry about memorizing it, writing it all down right now. It's more for thinking about the management aspect of marketing management. Basically, the idea is that analysis is a key component of every step, from planning to implementing the plan to kind of measuring the results of the plan and iterating and kind of going back to tweak your plan, right? Kind of always doing analysis. So what does this mean to do analysis when you're implementing your strategic plan? Next lecture, we'll talk about market research. Here, we're still kind of talking about high level kind of strategic considerations. So one heuristic that is fairly popular in the marketing world is this idea of the SWOT analysis, SWOT. All right. This stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I want to motivate this as like a common starting point in a marketing process. It can be used to kind of get a broad sense of where you are, given maybe some societal or technological changes that have sparked something new in the marketing environment. So, you know, we use it to evaluate a company's situation. You can use it to analyze like an entire company or just to analyze a specific product or product line. And typically you're always thinking about these different elements of the SWOT, which I'll come to next slide, relative to your competitors. Okay, so SWOT, strength, weakness, opportunity, threat. How do we define each of these different elements? Strengths are internal capabilities that can help a company reach its objectives. So it's an internal thing that's positive, okay? Weaknesses are internal limitations. So it's an internal thing, internal to the company, that's negative, right? Opportunities are external and positive. So these are things that are occurring outside the company, maybe at the industry level, or even at the economy level, but they're things that maybe the company can use to its advantage. And then threats, right? So again, external, but negative, right? Things that may be challenging the company's performance, right? So, we kind of talked about last class, Zoom, right? The opportunity for Zoom was everyone switching online. That was an external positive. A coming threat for Zoom is people going back into the workspace, back into the classroom, right? An external negative. It affects Zoom. It also affects every other company that's operating in this space, right? So the value of SWOT ultimately depends on the value of the strategies that it helps to motivate, okay? So it's only a starting point. We're gonna go through an example of kind of a SWOT analysis. So really it just kind of is a way for you to gather a bunch of information in one place and then think about how that helps you to make a decision, right? The SWOT analysis is not an end in and of itself. It's just a tool to make a decision. And if it's not helping you make a decision, it's worthless, okay? So when we think about strengths, internal capabilities compared to competitors, what you want to think about is, do I have better technology? Do I have more budget on hand? Are my relationship better? Are my costs lower? And, and even things like, is my product better? Is my customer service better, right? Weaknesses are internal, they're intrinsic limitations, okay, compared to the competitors. For instance, maybe my brand reputation is poor. Maybe my quality compared to the cost is not so good. Maybe my customer service personnel are not so good. The point about weaknesses is that they're intrinsic, okay? Weaknesses are something that it should basically be very, very hard for you to overcome. You kind of need to work around it, right? I think there's kind of like a tendency to classify weaknesses as like opportunities in disguise, where it's like, oh, we don't have this now, right? Our brand reputation is bad now, but maybe that's just an opportunity to build it for later. I want you guys to not think like that. A weakness is something that you just can't get around, right? That's just part of your business model, part of your business. You can't change it in the short term. And then opportunities and threats, the textbook kind of defines, different categories for these: cultural, regulatory, economic, societal, and technological. So they use this acronym CREST, but it's everything kind of happening outside the firm in sort of the general milieu. So let's look at an example to make this concrete. So here's Uber. So the perspective that I kind of want you to take is Uber in 2015. So let me tell you a little bit about Uber in 2015. 2015, Uber is kind of the only game in town in terms of a ride hailing app. There is no Lyft. There is no other stuff, just Uber. There's taxis, but they don't have like an app to summon them, okay? So, Uber is kind of taking stock of its situation, right? It has a competitor in the US, but in Canada, it doesn't have a competitor yet. There's regulatory problems maybe coming up, right? Maybe there's conflicts with the taxi drivers coming up. Uber wants to grow, right? They're here, they're in Canada. They see a lot of potential. Their market share is quite small, but they want to grow. So how are they kind of going to do it? What are their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and what threats are there out there? So I'm going to show you guys a few articles so you can kind of like look through these and decide for yourself like what kind of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats are out there for Uber. So what I want you to do is kind of read this first paragraph, this thing in red, and then look at each of these highlighted yellow things. So there's 4 in total, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. And I want you to think, are these a strength, a weakness, an opportunity, or a threat for Uber, right? In its ambitions to be much more than a taxi service. So I'll let you guys read that for like 30 seconds or so. All right, so looking at this first paragraph, maybe there's some terminology here that you haven't seen before. The first mile and last mile transportation networks have been underdeveloped. Does anyone know what is the first mile and last mile transportation networks? Last mile stuff. Connectivity. Okay, Kartik, yeah. Connectivity to public transport. So what is the last mile? The last mile is after you arrive at the train station, how do you get, like you arrive at your train station downtown Toronto, how do you get to where you really want to go, which is, the university or, a stadium or an arena, right? You maybe have to walk or you maybe take a bike or something like that. But moving from a transportation hub to your final stop is the last mile, right? So here, when this guy, Ian Black, says the first mile and the last mile have been underdeveloped, what he's saying is when we think about trains, when we think about shipping packages, the middle mile is really good. Getting it to a transportation hub is really good. Getting something to a hub is good, but kind of getting something to the consumer, that last little bit is quite hard. Okay. So he's saying the last mile and the first mile are underdeveloped. It's an unanticipated result of building a network of drivers in all these cities. We're in a good position to solve that problem. Opportunity, strength, weakness, or threat. Yeah, perfect. Opportunity. Good. So there's kind of this idea that if you're trying to get a good from a restaurant to a consumer, that's really hard to do. That's a last mile problem. If you're trying to get people from the train station to where they really want to go, that's a last mile problem. It's underdeveloped. There's an opportunity here for someone to step in. Uber thinks that maybe they can do it. Perfect. So that's an opportunity. What about this next paragraph? Consumers are becoming more comfortable with the sharing economy, where you can purchase a service or good directly. What do you think? Strength, weakness, opportunity, or threat? So I'm seeing some opportunity, I'm seeing some strength. So it's definitely a positive, right? Yeah, so is it external or is it internal? Is this something that is fundamental to Uber, or is this something that would affect any company operating in this space? Yeah, external, right? Consumers being more comfortable with the sharing economy, that would benefit any company that's trying to get into this sharing economy space, right? Uber is in it, so it's definitely an opportunity for Uber, but it would benefit any company. Perfect. So an opportunity. All right, what about this last one? Having many drivers on its app gives Uber an edge. Yeah, this one seems pretty clear, right? It's a strength. So if Uber is trying to solve this last mile problem, getting people kind of their last little bit, or getting products or food delivery, their last little bit, they're in a good position to do it, right? Last bit, the downside for Uber is that it's easy to download an app from a competitor if one comes to town. Yeah, okay, so definitely a negative. I see mostly threat, some weakness, right? So is this external or is this internal, right? External, right? It's easy. Any company that's operating here can very quickly have a competitor, right? If you're on Uber, if you have Uber on your phone, you can very quickly download Lyft. But if you have Lyft on your phone, you can very quickly download Uber, right? People can switch very easily, so can drivers, right? So if a competitor comes, it's hard to keep people from switching. So, okay, definitely a threat, external. Can we list a weakness? I think on the next slide, we're going to have a weakness. So let's take a look. Poll finds rising Uber ridership and satisfaction. So you can just read those highlighted paragraphs, think about it, and then we'll talk about it. Okay. So this first highlighted paragraph, people seem happy with Uber, more happy with Uber than with taxis. What do you guys think? Strength. Yeah, for sure. And then this kind of second paragraph spread over the two lines, we have disability advocate groups that are terrified that Uber will shut down. Okay, so Jonathan asks, why is it internal? So, you know, the 93% of people who like Uber, like that's something specific to Uber, right? It's not like any company that comes into that space will immediately have that high approval. Yeah, Shuhui got it, yeah. Perfect, so yeah, the second one, if you're 28 years old and you have a credit card and a cell phone, that's great, but there's a huge chunk of the market that can never use Uber. So I'm seeing some, it's definitely a negative. I'm seeing some threat, some weakness, right? So yeah, why is this a weakness? Yeah, Abdullah, it's just the way the app works, right? You can't use Uber in any other way than kind of doing it on your phone with a credit card. They can't really change it, right? They need to kind of just accept that's their business model, right? Perfect. So that's definitely a weakness for Uber. Now, like whether the weakness is relevant or not for their business goals, like, you know, if they're trying to solve these last mile issues for people and for products, does it matter that they're kind of fundamentally weak when it comes to people who don't have a cell phone or a credit card, right? Depends. Like if that's the people they're trying to reach, then of course they need to do something different. But if they think there's enough other people that they can serve, then it is something that they just have to accept. This market, these consumers are not accessible to them, and kind of move on. Yeah, I see Mohammed's hand is up.
So Professor, why don't you think that they accept cash? Because here in Saudi they have a different service called Kayan and they only accept cash.
How does the service get their cut?
I honestly don't know how that works. Yeah,
I mean that might be something to ask next time you're taking a ride. Yeah, but I mean, it definitely makes it easy for Uber to get their, I don't know what it is, 30% of the ride fare when it's all by credit card.
Maybe Kayan uses like a monthly subscription to become a driver.
Could be, yeah, could be a totally different business model, right? Maybe their drivers are more like employees and they kind of need to check in and sort of bring in the cash at the end of the day.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, okay, so I do see Uber has cash payment option in many countries. So super interested in hearing about that. Definitely like type in chat. I'm gonna kind of like keep talking about this example, but I'm curious to see like if anyone's used that and how Uber gets their cut. Okay, and so let's go kind of last slide here. We have traffic moving again, protesting cab drivers vow to return on Friday, right? Okay, so after a day-long blockade that stopped traffic in front of City Hall, taxi drivers have agreed to a truce for now. So at the very bottom right, we see the problem drivers say is that while taxi cabs are heavily regulated, Uber cabs have been given a free ride to break city bylaws while officials wait to draft the official regulations, which are due in mid-spring. What do you guys think about this one in the bottom right? Could be an opportunity, could be a threat. Yeah, so what's happening? There's regulations that are being drafted that might affect how Uber operates, right? So uncertain, could be a threat, could be an opportunity. Probably feels, in retrospect, it turned out to be an opportunity because they kind of gave Uber free rein to do whatever they want. But at the time, probably would have felt like more of a threat, right? Numerous US cities and Canadian cities had outright banned Uber. And recently we're seeing a lot of emphasis, I think, coming out of Europe, that Uber employees or Uber drivers should be paid like employees, right? Okay, cool. So our SWOT analysis retrospective, right? Uber was trying to dominate the last mile in terms of moving people and maybe other stuff too. Other stuff being restaurant stuff, right? Uber Eats, right? So did Uber successfully capitalize on its strengths? Well, we had a big Uber Eats expansion, right? Does anyone know, is Uber Eats the dominant food delivery service in the GTA? Think so? Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, so they are last time I checked. So in terms of capitalizing on their strengths, what would those have been, right? The huge number of drivers, people's satisfaction with the service, right? So definitely capitalizing on its strengths there. And what about a threat, right? This idea, it's easy to download a competitor's app, right? So we know Lyft came and a lot of people downloaded the app. What do you guys think? Did Uber anticipate this threat well, right? Has Lyft kind of taken a big market share from Uber? Yeah, so not much, right? Uber is still dominant. I think Lyft is sitting like somewhere between like 20 and 30%, which is still more than probably Uber would have hoped. Not much. Uber dominates still. They anticipated it. So in terms of anticipating the threat and acting though, do you know, did Uber do anything to try to keep people loyal to their app compared to just switching to Lyft? Do you guys know, does Uber have a loyalty program? Yeah, Uber Pass, Uber Rewards, right? So Uber Rewards, I think it's somewhat recent, but this is a way to lock people into their service, right? This feels like a benefit for us where we get points by using Uber. But from Uber's perspective, what they like is that if we switch services, we kind of don't get like we don't get to kind of be using these rewards or using these points, right? So it kind of like keeps us, it's, the same idea behind like buy 10 coffees, get one free. It kind of stimulates people to sort of stay loyal. Like if I'm going to buy a coffee, I want it to give me rewards, right? So we have Uber also kind of, even though there's this threat out there, Uber kind of takes steps to keep it at bay. Okay. Awesome. All right. So that was kind of an example of a SWOT analysis, right? So we basically had all these strengths and weaknesses. And then the idea is, how do we use these to make a decision, right? The decisions Uber ended up making were kind of rewards and kind of expanding on Uber Eats, which turned out to be good ones, right? Yeah, and Taha says, Uber Eats uses the same account as Uber Ride service, makes it convenient to benefit off multiple services. Yeah, perfect, right? You want to use Uber because then it'll give you Uber like rides, because then it'll give you points to spend at Uber Eats, right? And there's nothing like that for Lyft, as far as I know, right? Perfect. That kind of like cross service externality is like a huge part of ensuring loyalty. All right, so that's one heuristic. Our second one is another fun 2x2 matrix. So first we'll define strategic business unit, SBU. These are the businesses that make up a company. So it can be a division, it can be a product line, a single product. It's up to you how you define it, right? Uber itself, you have Uber Eats, right? And the tool here is portfolio analysis. So how do we evaluate these strategic business units? So the point of portfolio analysis is to guide decisions about how to allocate resources across our current SBUs, okay? And there'll be some implications for how we should adjust our marketing mix. So the kind of approach that we use is this for portfolio analysis here is going to be this BCG growth share matrix. what we do is we classify our strategic business units by two attributes: market growth rate and relative market share. And we get a 2x2 matrix of 4 various shapes and animals. Right? So we have stars, which are high growth and high share strategic business units. Cash cows are low growth, high share strategic business units. Question marks are, I don't know what's going to happen. It's growing very fast, but right now its market share is quite low. And dogs are both low growth and low share, right? So probably not a good performing business unit. Okay. So the idea is that kind of the market growth rate is a measure of kind of market attractiveness, right? How kind of compelling is this as a place to sort of invest money with the idea that maybe this will be a growth center? Relative market share is kind of your strength at that time within the market, okay? So how do we kind of compute these two things, share and growth? So if we have the data, the revenue share is going to be the dollar value of the products sold by your company divided by the potential dollar value of the market. The top part of this is very easy to find if you're working for the company, right? Or if you have access to market research data, you can find out what is the dollar value of, you know, Apple Watches sold. The denominator is hard. No one publishes this without assumptions, right? What is the potential dollar value of any particular market? That's often something that you'll need to think about and make some choices. So the survey for next week is going to be kind of computing revenue share and relative growth rate for a product. And kind of the trick of it is choosing that kind of value of the market. Right? So our relative growth rate is kind of just the simple formula for growth, you know, share at time t divided by the share at time t minus 1, you know, whatever that is. T might be in terms of years or months if you're thinking about more short term, minus 1. Okay, so once you have your revenue share and your relative growth rate, you kind of lay out a few options which are appropriate for the different types of products, right? The different types of SBU, right? So I know it's kind of like late in the lecture at this point, and there's like, it's like already like a new concept and there's 10 minutes before 7. So it's okay not to pay too close attention to these words right now. I will say that with these kind of 2x2 matrices, very, very easy to come up with questions that are like multiple choice or short answer, right? So it's okay, like kind of class is winding down now. I'll go through them, but definitely review these in detail on your time because I will be asking about them, okay? So a firm's options, once you've classified your strategic business unit by kind of figuring out the share, the revenue share and the growth rate, you might want to build it, try to increase market share. Could be good for stars or question marks. So for this, you can just focus on the slides. Don't have to go into the textbook. In fact, I think if in this edition of the textbook, this might not even be in there, but maybe it's chapter 3. But even if it is there, all you need is what's on the slide. You could harvest, so increase short-term cash flow, could be good for weak cash cows, could be good for question marks, could be good for dogs. You can hold, just maintain market share, or you can divest. Right? How do you implement these different strategies for an SBU? Here we have 4 options, or 3 options here. Where is divest? Oh yeah, of course, divest is just getting rid of it, right? So there's no kind of options there. How do we kind of implement these things? By picking elements of the marketing mix, right? The 4 Ps. If you're trying to increase market share, there's intuitive things you can do, right? Lower prices, increase promotions, improve your product. If you're trying to harvest, again, intuitive things, right? Reduce the service, raise prices. You know, you'll lose some customers, but the ones who remain, you're making a higher markup. Right? So each of these kind of classifications is associated with sort of some guidance on what you might want to do. But this is just one part of the analysis, right? So when you kind of do an analysis like this, you have to be aware of there's some potential complications, right? When you're doing a BCG, there's choices that you have to make, right? So let's think about Google as a big company doing the BCG growth share analysis on, let's say, like its advertising arm, right? Advertising for Google is where it started, right? Selling ads. It's still by far their most profitable kind of business unit. So does anyone know the name of kind of Google's main kind of advertising program? Alphabet's, yeah, the company that kind of owns Google. Adsense, yeah, so Adsense is kind of Google's marketing, or Google's kind of advertising service that you can kind of buy ads through Google to serve in like a targeted way to consumers browsing the internet. So Google Ads, we can definitely say, is a cash cow. It's big, stable, makes a lot of money, not growing very fast, but probably because it's basically a monopoly. But Google also has different advertising, right? What other platforms does Google own that they sell ads on? YouTube advertising. Yeah, perfect, right? Is YouTube, so if we group all of Google's ad programs together it's a cash cow, right? If we separate things out, so that we have Google AdSense and then YouTube advertising, Google AdSense is still a cash cow. But what about YouTube? Is YouTube, here I put it as a dog, that means kind of low market share, low growth. So kind of focusing on growth and actually market share as well, right? In terms of like video advertising, you can sell on TikTok, you can sell on Instagram. You have kind of other options for selling ads in kind of the video space. So where is YouTube in all of that? This is kind of one complication, right? You need to decide at what level you're defining the SBUs, right? Because like I said, altogether, Google's ad business is great. Separating things out, YouTube, they make good money. They made like a ton more money this year than last year. But compared to their expenses, compared to all the hosting costs, right? It's not clear that YouTube is a good performer, right? So should Google define its online advertising business as a single SBU? Should it distinguish, right? And it gives you more resolution, maybe to make better choices, but it's not clear where to draw the line. That's your judgment, right? Google ads themselves, they come in many different forms, right? Some are more profitable than others, right? So Google AdWords is fairly profitable. But kind of, there's also Google ads that, appear if you have like sort of home devices, right? So if you have kind of cheap versions of Google Home devices, you'll get ads coming in sometimes, right? Are those kind of profitable? Should those be separated out? All right. And the last complication, we'll go kind of a bit of a throwback example to the 90s. So here we have a product which is rollerblades. Massive growth product for a while, from late 80s to the mid 90s. Started small, but a lot of competitors in the space by the mid 90s. So Nike buys a brand for about $500 million in order to get in on this market. And within 5 years, the market stops growing, starts shrinking, and Nike sells Bauer, almost 15 years later for half of what it bought. And then that's not even counting inflation, right? So what's this example illustrating? What's a potential problem? The growth rate really depends on the time period you pick, right? Something like, say, a fidget spinner had a huge growth rate for a few months, yeah, and then it collapsed. So at what sort of time interval should you be computing the growth rate? Because it'll really matter for then how you classify your business unit. Right? Perfect. Okay, so in the last 3 minutes, I see there's a ton of interesting stuff in the chat going on. I'm sorry, I can't kind of speak to any of it right now. I need to sort of convey first survey. Here we have an Apple Watch. I want you guys in this week's survey to classify the SBU, right? Question mark, star, cash cow, or dog. Really, the thought that you should be putting in is, how do I define market potential? When I'm computing that revenue share of the Apple Watch, what is the total market potential? That will help determine where it's classified and its growth rate. All right, so in the last 3 minutes then, your term project. So like I mentioned last class, you're going to design a kind of comprehensive and specific marketing plan. It can be a new product or service of an existing company, or it can be a new venture that you propose. It can be real, it can be fictional. But it's important that you deploy the tools that you learn in this course, right? I am going to want to see like a BCG growth share analysis if you use it to make a decision in your marketing plan, right? I am going to want to see a SWOT analysis, but not just you kind of like listing these things and being like, okay, I did it. If you're using it, I want to see like what decision you make, right? So I want you to use the tools of marketing in kind of an applied way. So there's a 2-page double-space proposal that's going to be due at the end of the first week in October. 2 paragraphs only for this proposal, okay? First one, what is your product or service, right? I know that sounds basic. Like a lot of groups like don't get it every year. Make sure I totally understand what it is you're trying to sell. Like, what is the product? What does it do? What is the service? What is it trying to do? You know, work in what want or need is it addressing? Okay. Second one, who is your anticipated target market, right? We're going to be talking more about target markets in the next few weeks, but who is it who's actually going to reflect the sort of most important group for this product? Who is definitely going to buy it, right? Who does this really address a want for? TikTok 2. TikTok already is TikTok 2. There was a TikTok before TikTok. So sample projects, grading rubric, and outline of how to structure the proposal will be posted by next week, okay? So you're gonna have all the tools you need to kind of think about how you wanna plan this out. All right, forming groups. A few people have kind of formed groups already. Most of you haven't. So if you have at least one other person that you'd like to be in a group with, you must email me their name by Friday. Email me their name, CC them. Only one of you needs to send the email, okay? Can be one other person, can be 2 other people, can be a full group of 4. But if you want to have that person in your group, send me that email. If you'd like to be assigned a group, just wait for now. I'll wait for all these emails to come in, and then I'll make sure that everyone has a home, okay? Perfect. How many people need to be in a group? Yeah, 4 people. How would we do a BCG analysis if it's novel? Do we look for something similar? Yeah, so you wouldn't be able to compute the revenue of something new. So BCG analysis, really, it's more useful for existing products. Yeah, not so much for new stuff. Good question. Yeah. Okay. All right. So that's it for class today. I'll stick around for a few minutes if you have questions. But yeah, otherwise, survey's going up, and I'll see you guys next week.
Thank you, Professor. Have a good evening.
Sure. You too.